In this video, we're going to be factoring quadratic expressions. So the first thing that I have to be aware of is that this is a quadratic because its highest degree is 2. The other thing I have to realize is that this is in standard form. In order for me to factor, it must be in standard form. So how do I know it's in standard form? Because standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So this here is standard form. If it's not in standard form, I have to put it in standard form. So the first thing I'm going to look for in factoring is I'm going to look for the greatest common factor. So when I'm looking for the greatest common factor, it's in all three terms. So let's look at our numbers first. I have 6, I have 19, and I have 8. My factors for 6 is 1 times 6, 2 times 3, and then it will repeat with 3 times 2, so I'm not going to write that. My factors for 19, 1 times 19, and then it goes 19 times 1, so I'm not going to repeat that. My factors for 8, 1 times 8, 2 times 4, 3 doesn't work, 4 repeats, so I kind of know I'm done when I start repeating. So now I want to look for the number that's the largest that they all have in common. And in this case, the only thing they have in common is 1. So in step 1, when my greatest common factor is 1, I say there is none. So I'm not going to factor anything out of these three terms. And because it's a quadratic, I only have x squared, I have x, there's no x here, so I cannot factor out an x. So step 2 then would be I'm going to multiply the first and third terms. Okay, so what are my first and what are my third terms? My first term is 6x squared, and my third term is a positive 8. So if I multiply 6x squared times 8, I end up getting 48x squared. Okay. So now the reason I'm multiplying these is because I want to find the factors of these that add up to my middle term. So right here, I want the sum to equal 19x. So I'm going to make myself a little table that's going to help me do that. So my factors of 48 is 1 and 48, and my factors of x squared is x times x. So both terms will have an x with it, so it multiplies to x squared. So 2x times 24x gives me 48x squared. 3x and 16x are other factors. 4x and 12x are other factors. 5 doesn't work. 6x times 8x. So all of these multiply to give me 48x squared. But I only want one of them will work. So when I add these together, 1x and 48x, I end up getting 49x. Well, that doesn't add to 19, so that's not going to work. 2x and 24x, that gives me 26x. Well, that doesn't add to 19. 3x and 16x, that gives me 19x. So that is the one I want right here. I want this 3x plus 16x because it is going to give me this middle term right here. That's what I'm looking for. So this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take this 19 and I'm going to split it into 3x plus 16x. So this is 3x plus 16x. I'm going to bring down this plus 8, and I'm going to bring down this 6x squared, and that was a positive 3. So now when we look, I'm going to color code this. So this 3x plus 16x is the same as the 19. The 6x squared was brought down in the front, and the plus 8 was brought down in the back. So the whole reason we did this here was to find this middle term. So now the third step we're going to do is we're going to group our 4 terms into 2 groups. Okay? So notice I have 4 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm now going to group them into 2 groups. So that means there I have 6x squared plus 3x. That's one group. And then I'm going to have 16x plus 8. Okay? If this were a minus, I'd do something slightly different here. This is a simpler problem. So now what I'm going to do is the fourth thing I'm going to do, move this up, is I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor from each group. Okay, so this one here, this is important. This one here, this greatest common factor in the fourth step is very important. So I'm going to look at each group. I'm going to look at my first group. I have 6x squared and 3x. So let's look at the numbers first. I have 6 and I have 3. Excuse me. My factors of 6, 1 times 6, 2 times 3. My factors of 3, 1 times 3, and that's it. The largest number that they share is the number 3. That means I'm going to factor out a 3. Excuse me, from both terms. But wait, there's more. Notice I have an x squared and I have an x. So let's look at that over here. I have an x squared and I have an x. My factors of x squared are x times x, and my factors of x is simply 1 times x. So we can see here that my common factor here is x. So I'm going to factor out 3x. Do not throw that away. The next thing we do is we write it out in front of that parentheses. So we have 3x. Then I'm going to write the parentheses, and then I'm going to divide. So I have to divide to get this here. So 6x squared divided by 3x gives me 2x. And this is important. This is where people will mess up. 3x divided by 3x gives me 1. That is the number 1. So I'm going to write plus 1. Okay, so now I have to do the same sort of thing over here. I have to think, what are my factors of 16 and 8? So let's figure that out down here in the margin. So my factors of 16 and my factors of 8. So that's going to be 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 3 doesn't work, 4 times 4, 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, 7 doesn't work, and so on. 8 is 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and then there's nothing else. So the largest number is 8, right here. That's my greatest common factor. So that means since my first term here is positive, this is positive, I'm going to factor out positive. So this is 8 divided by 8. So when I'm looking here, if this has an x, this does not have an x. So x is not a greatest common factor. So I have to take this 8, I have this plus, I'm going to bring that down, plus, and then I'm going to bring this 8 here in the front, and then I'm going to divide. So now 16x divided by 8 gives me 2x, and again, 8 divided by 8 gives you 1. That's a very important thing. So that's a plus 1. It doesn't go away. Okay, so now we're almost done. I look at these two and I think, what do they have in common? Well, the thing that they share is this right here. They're sharing this 2x plus 1. That is a common factor. They both have that, which means I can divide out 2x plus 1 from both terms. 2x plus 1. So just like I did in the previous one, I divided and brought it out front. I divided and brought it out front. I'm going to do the same thing here. These are my greatest common factors. So that I'm going to bring down, and that gives me 2x plus 1 times whatever I have left after I divide. So 2x plus 1 divided by 2x plus 1, it's the same number. This divides out to 1. This divides out to 1. So what do I have left? I have 3x plus 8. So I'm going to do like this. This is 3x, and this is 8. So those are my binomials that are factors of my quadratic. So this here is my answer. These here are my factors. So there's one last thing I want to write here. So this is the standard form of my quadratic, and that was 6x squared plus 19x plus 8, and my factored form, which is also known as intercept form, when I factored my quadratic, I ended up getting 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 8. These are both the same quadratic. So when I check, I can check using my calculator, I can check using Desmos calculator. If I put 6x squared plus 19x plus 8 in my y equals, and then I put down my factor choices, 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 8, and I look at the graph, they're going to graph exactly the same. So as you see, unfortunately I don't have the color calculator here, but I only see one parabola. I'm going to double check by going to my table. second graph, and as you can see, my y's all have the same value, which means that my first function, which was 6x squared plus 19x plus 8, is the same as my second function, which is these two binomials multiplied together.